Merry Christmas to Tennessee fans. A little bit late, but you probably got the Christmas present you wanted. Nico Iamaleava is going to start the Cheez-It Bowl for you. We got some thoughts on that. Got some thoughts on the transfer portal and where things stand with that. Not just what's going on in the portal, but also the latest ruling on the transfer portal. That happened more or less over your Christmas break. We're glad to have you in here. It is December 27th, Wednesday, December 27th, 2023, the last one on the face of this planet. Gonna make it a great one. Talked about Nico, talked about the portal. We're gonna get to both of those. Also, got some predictions for you for this NY6 bowl season. Got some picks in the Orange Bowl with Georgia and Florida State. Also, don't look now, but the Cotton Bowl about to happen this upcoming Friday between Ohio State and Missouri. That's one of the sneakier bowl matchups. So those are the two we got for you today. We will have some more predictions for you for tomorrow's show, so make sure you're dialed in for that one. We got a ton to jump into, man. I don't want to waste too much more time. Hey, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Talking college football every single day. I told y'all, we will have content for you. Even when people are taking days off and going on holidays, whatever, we still have content for you. And this past Christmas was no exception to that. So make sure you're following me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Pickell. Want to hear from y'all. It's a great place for us to hear from you. We got to talk about this right now because this just broke right before we got on the air. Nico Iamaleava is set to start the bowl game for your Tennessee Vols against Iowa. And I opened the show saying, Merry Christmas to Vol fans, because this was probably what you wanted. And that's not to say anything negative about Joe Milton. Joe Milton, I think, filled the gap pretty well for you between the Hendon Hooker era and what will be the Nico Iamaleava era. But with that being said, Nico has some stuff, man, that you just can't teach. 6'6", 206 pounds, was the #1 player in the class of 2023 for us here at On3. Dude is a baller, all right? And so you know what it was with Joe Milton playing quarterback for you. He's going to sit out the bowl game. So now Nico is going to start the bowl game for you. When I say you know what it was, you saw what the offense could do. You got a full season of it. Wasn't bad, but you know by nature of what Hendon Hooker brought to the table, when you have someone who can be consistent throwing the ball downfield and can be efficient in the intermediate game, this thing can really hum now. This thing can start to compound. So, one, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. We appreciate y'all for that. If you're watching this video in a one-off cut, we appreciate y'all being dialed in. Again, make sure you're subscribed. Tennessee fans, this is exciting for y'all now. So make sure you're dialed in. We got a lot to talk about leading up and through this bowl game, quite frankly, with the Nico era beginning. So the good news for Nico, if you score 15 points, you might win this football game. The bad news, you face one of the most tough defenses in the entire country when it comes to the Iowa Hawkeyes. So how should we assess this first start for Nico Iamaleava? 5-star cat, again, #1 player in the country in 2023. There's a ton of expectations on this kid. There's expectations for him to be the next Peyton Manning in Knoxville. And I say that with a little bit of hyperbole baked in there, but I don't think there's that much because that's kind of expectations on this kid right now. So when I say how should we assess this, you should assess it the same way you would for any other starting quarterback. Understand now, this is a bowl game for this guy. He's going to have a little bit of prep time. He's been getting good reps during the season. But it's also not a conference game against SEC opponent, and it's not a away or a home site, neutral field. So when we talk about what we should expect from him, going back to what I just said, you expect from him what you would expect any other starting quarterback. There's probably going to be some really good plays, probably going to be some learning moments. But what I want to make sure we say is you don't define Nico Iamaleava by this start. You learn a lot. You take what you can from what he does in this game. But I wouldn't focus too much on what he doesn't do well. What I would focus on, how I would watch the start from a Tennessee fan, I would focus on the flash plays. And when I say the flash plays, I mean stuff that you say, oh, okay, that's why he was the #1 player in the country last cycle. Okay, he can make that field throw from the left hash all the way to the deep out. I mean, that's an NFL kind of throw. Okay, we can build upon that because that's exactly what this game is. It's a starting point. It's not the end-all, be-all. It's a starting point for where Nico is going to go in his career at Tennessee. So you focus on what you can build on in those flash plays. I think maybe even more importantly, you focus on how he responds to the negative plays. If he does end up throwing an interception in this game, Iowa, they're pretty good at turning teams over. If he does have a negative play like that, how does he respond? How's his body language? How's his composure? Because he's had now some time to watch Joe Milton and see his response mechanism. And I think, to be quite honest with you, I think Joe Milton has put a tremendous example forward for young Nico and what he's going to be here. And I think that shows just the maturity level of Joe Milton. I think it shows the opportunity now for what Nico was able to learn having sat the entire season behind Joe Milton. Because Tennessee fans, like I said, this is something you've been chomping at the bit for a while. This is something that I would be excited about as well from a Tennessee fan. But on top of this now, it's not going to be all on Nico Iamaleava, especially not in his first start. Like maybe as you give him some more range of motion with this offense next season, he'll be able to kind of have a little bit more control. But like in this game, make no mistake about it, you need to support him effectively. As much as you want to see him uncork the deep ball and have shades of Hendon Hooker and see things like that, like you still need to be able to run the football effectively and take some pressure off of him. Because as talented as he is, if you make him win the football game for you, that's not what you want to ask him to do in his very first start. Still a big stage, still national television, still the biggest football game he will have played in his young career. Now, I want to make sure we get this out there too. This is extremely important. Good or bad from young Nico in this football game, we need to be very, very careful to not fall victim to bowl syndrome. And what I mean by that is this is one data point. It's also our last data point before we head into the horrible thing that is winter and spring when it comes to the college football landscape. It's horrible because we don't get games. But whatever he does in this game, people will analyze it to the nth degree. They will break it down. They will put it under a microscope and give you every single thought under the sun and extrapolate as much as possible from this one game. I'm telling you, there's some value in analyzing the good and the bad from this game, but there's not a ton of value in making a definitive statement, again, on what he's going to be long-term at Tennessee. Because some people, if he goes, let's say 10 for 20, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, people will say, he's mid, he's overrated, he's this, he's that. No, maybe he's just a true freshman making his first start. Now, to the exact same token, he goes out there and throws 4 touchdowns and throws for 300 yards passing and is nearly perfect when it comes to his completion percentage. That's awesome. Let's build on that. But that doesn't mean that's who he is for the entirety of his career. It's going to be like any other story in college football. If you're a college football player, your growth isn't linear. Success isn't linear. Going to be some good days, going to be some bad days. How you respond and build on those days is what will define Nico, not his first start in this bowl game. So be excited, enjoy it. Again, don't take too much from it. But for the good folks in Knoxville, like I said, you've been waiting for this one for a while. Number 8 is going to start at quarterback for you. And just the potential of what he can be in Knoxville, again, is what's exciting for you. He's got all the tools in the tool chest. He's got everything that you need to be successful as a quarterback. He can push it downfield. He's accurate. He's a great athlete. Dude could have gone and played volleyball at a really high level if he had wanted to. He's got that it factor. He's got that special factor to him. Just enjoy watching his journey. So like I said, Christmas came just a little bit late for the good folks in Knoxville, but nonetheless, the Nico era has begun. That's going to be a lot of fun, man. I cannot wait to watch that one. That game, unfortunately, I believe it's the same time as the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Day. So that kind of bummed me out just a little bit that we had that kind of, setup, because I would have loved to just have full screen, only Nico, only Tennessee, Iowa in that game. But regardless, we'll have a good time. We'll enjoy it. And we'll make sure we get some Fiesta Bowl in there as well. Appreciate everybody dialed in live, man. If you could like the video, that'd be tremendous for us. Thank you for that. Let's keep on rolling here. This is what we were going to lead the show with, and that is that the transfer portal is still popping. Transfer portal is still going absolutely berserk. And we're going to get to the names that are in the portal here in just a second. Before we get to that, though, there was a ruling that was announced as it pertains to guys being able to transfer and be eligible this upcoming season. And the ruling was, essentially, you can do it. Anytime transfer for this upcoming year, you can be eligible in the 2024-2025 season if you transfer in this 2023 window, okay? So how you feel about this is probably, relating to your situation, just to be honest. But my big question here when it comes to this transfer portal ruling is, where does it end? Where does it end? Because the one-time transfer thing, cool. It used to be you could transfer as a graduate transfer anytime, be good to go. But if you wanted to transfer during your undergrad, you had to sit out a year. Okay, so fine, we're good with that. Then it became a thing of, well, you can transfer anytime with a waiver. Okay, then it became you can transfer anytime, period. Okay, got it. But you see this kind of trend we're going towards now. Now with the anytime transfer, it's becoming free agency. And how you feel about that, again, probably goes back to how you feel about college football as a whole and if it helps your team or not. And I'm all about that. I understand every circumstance is different. But do we really want free agency? Do we really want these kids to be able to go to 4 different schools in 4 years? Because that's the way we're headed right now. That's essentially what this ruling is setting us up for. My concern here is for some of these kids that are getting advice on transferring, or maybe are getting no advice on transferring, how does that set them up going forward? Because listen, we're all human. We all fall victim to the grass is always greener kind of feel. That's not always the case. And for some of these kids, they're being told to transfer when it's not actually in their best interest. Like there's a couple of drawbacks here that I have questions about. The first is, if I'm getting told to transfer every single year, let's just say I'm at a top tier program. Let's say I'm at a Ohio State, a Georgia, and Alabama. At those kind of schools, it just takes one good year. Just takes one. So if I'm not playing as a true freshman, I was a 5-star kid, and I got my trainer or my uncle or whoever's in my ear telling me, hey, you should be playing. And that other kid was rated how you were rated. You should be playing right now. Okay, so I'm going to transfer. Well, would it not have been better to stay on the scout team, to stick there for a couple of years, and then your junior or your senior have that big year, then pop and go to the NFL? Would that not have been more advantageous for you? Because the thing I'm concerned about here is the continuity in these kids' development. Understand now, strength programs across the country, the way you start as a freshman, most of the great strength programs will have a plan for you from your freshman year all the way through your senior year. Meaning they understand how your anatomy works best, what they need to train out of you, what they need to train into you. And if you go somewhere new, you're essentially hitting the reset button on that. And I'm not saying you can't still be successful, but I am saying it is more advantageous for you to stay in the same strength and conditioning program for the entirety of your college career, because that's going to set you up for the strongest base and the most success going forward. Again, that's not all the time, but that is most of the time in my humble opinion. Now, the last thing about this, and this is probably not on the forefront of everybody's mind, but I think it should be noted, what about the academic side of this? If you're transferring every single year, I have to imagine not all of those credits are transferring with you every single year. So before you were going to graduate in 3, you transfer twice. Now you're back to being a sophomore when you should be a senior. And I understand the NFL is everyone's goal here. I'm with it, but the NFL isn't happening for everybody. Are we setting these kids up for success if they don't end up making the league and they don't have the credits they wanted to have, and by their 4th year they're still trying to find a way to get that degree and the NFL is no longer on the table? Like, I'm just saying, let's think about this thing long term. We've opened Pandora's box. I get it. We have to live with it now. But again, my question is, where does it end? Going back to that transfer portal window thing, it was, you could have the graduate deal, then it was a waiver, and now it's anytime. And so where does it end? Are we going to have a thing where if we're moving towards free agency, well, how does free agency work? There are guys that will be traded mid-season, guys that'll be cut and sign somewhere else mid-season. Are we going to see a thing where a kid plays on a team in week 3 and then he's somewhere else by week 9? Legitimately switching teams during the year? Is that where we're headed? I don't know where you draw the line, because we continue to move down this path, and it makes me a little bit concerned. Not so much for college football, because I think college football, as long as we have Saturdays, we're in good shape. That's just how I feel about it. But as we move towards this idea of kids being able to transfer anytime, I worry about the college football players. The sport is fine, but the players that are actually making up the sport, their future, and how they're set up for success after they're done playing ball, that's the thing I'm worried about. That's the thing that I'm curious about as we move forward into this transfer portal era. So, again, Pandora's box is open. We're going to talk about it until we have nothing else to talk about, but that's just something to watch for here as we move further and further into this transfer portal era of the college football universe. Got some more to talk about with the guys that are in the portal. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you all about our partners over at Prize Picks. Y'all, if you follow us here for Prize Picks throughout the course of the season, started out hot, we've cooled off a fair amount here. All right, I'm just going to be completely honest with y'all. Just me and you talking right now. If you're following the trend, I would fade us. We have been ice cold. Now, with that being said, if you want to be in the foxhole with us and say, okay, nothing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose, which is where we are right now in the Prize Picks universe, I'd say, all right, let's buckle the chin strap. Let's put on the eye black. Let's get ready to roll. Okay, so a couple of Prize Picks plays for you here for the Rose Bowl. We're focusing on the stat totals rushing for the quarterbacks in this one. J.J. McCarthy, his number is 15.5 rush yards. Okay, I think to win this game for Michigan, you can't just do the sledgehammer approach, all right? You can't just go Blake Corum, A-gap, and B-gap for the entirety of the game and expect to beat Alabama. I don't think you play bully ball with them and win. I think you got to have a little change-up. We've seen Alabama struggle with Jaden Daniels. We've seen them struggle with Peyton Thorne running the football. A little design quarterback run for J.J. McCarthy. He can go now. He's not sneaky fast. He's just fast, like a 4.5 40 guy. So I like the more there to hit for J.J. McCarthy, more than 15.5 rush yards. We're going to power play this for now with Jalen Milroe rush yards. Listen, you dance with the one that brung you in a game like this. Granddaddy them all, one of the best defenses in the country on the other side of the field. You are sticking with your bread and butter. And your bread and butter to this point in the year has been Jalen Milroe toting that rock like it's his job. 34.5 rush yards. We will also take the more there. Prize Picks, daily fantasy, super easy to use, safe, easy withdrawals. Make sure you're dialed in here. Best way to do that, redeem code JD when you sign up. 100% deposit match up to $100, okay? Redeem code JD, no periods in there, just those two letters. They'll get you all set. So those are our plays for the Rose Bowl. We'll have some more thoughts on the Sugar Bowl here in the very near future. Appreciate Prize Picks taking care of us, taking care of y'all. Again, nothing more dangerous now. A couple of guys backed into a corner here. Got to fight their way out. So fade or follow there with Prize Picks. All right, now, it's been a while since we were able to talk in a live capacity about what's going on in the transfer portal. So let's do that, man. And I want to start with this. This was a big-time portal entry, and it is wide receiver from Texas A&M, Evan Stewart. Evan Stewart is currently the top uncommitted player in the transfer portal. Number 2 player overall for us here at On 3. Now, Pete Nakos jumped on the Andy Staples On 3 show. It's also on this program, so make sure you're dialed. Another reason to be subscribed. Also check that out on podcast. But he and Andy got to chopping it up. And the 2 schools that got thrown out there first for Evan Stewart as potential landing spots was Texas and Alabama. And Pete Nakos did a little Lee Corso, said, no, not so fast, my friend. Been thrown out there, I've heard those, but I don't see those being viable options. Instead, Pete brought up schools like Florida State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, USC, and Oregon, all schools he's hearing right now for a one Evan Stewart. Let me backtrack again. Evan Stewart, say what you want about A&M, as much of a difficult time they've had these last couple of years, Evan Stewart has been balling. He is, I think, has the potential in the right offense to be one of the best receivers in the country, like Biletnikoff kind of status. That's how good he is. You see that ball in the air, it's 50-50 ball for most people. It's like 80-20 Evan Stewart's ball whenever that happens. Great after the catch. His game translates anywhere. So you hear a lot about guys and having the right fit, and if they end up, do they fit in this offense, do they fit in this scheme and all that? Like, I'm telling you, Evan Stewart, it don't matter. Just get him the football. Florida State, I think, is really interesting because Johnny Wilson will be gone to the league. In my opinion, Keon Coleman, more likely than not, will be gone to the league. And they have a proof of concept there with transfer portal guys. We say it a lot. We say the same thing right now with the quarterback. Keep an eye on who they get at quarterback via the portal, because I'm assuming they're going to go that way. Have to believe that will affect his decision. Same thing with Ole Miss. Proof of concept. Trey Harris transfers there, blows up. Juice Wells said, I also want to go there. You wonder if it's a thing where, is there enough football to go around is just my question, not with any inside information, but Ole Miss would make a lot of sense as well. Staying in the SEC, would have to believe that's appealing to a guy like Evan Stewart. Now, Tennessee, I think, is one to really watch here, just by nature of the amount of sense it makes. We talk about, the scheme fitting the player. Evan Stewart fits anywhere. I already said that. But in terms of, the damage you can do in that offense and the potential of having Nico really step into his own this upcoming season, have a guy that can more than likely get you the football, the number 1 player in the 2023 class. You have an offense that is going to allow you to put up big numbers. Just ask Jalen Hyatt. If you win your matchup one-on-one in that offense, you're scoring a touchdown or you're getting a big chunk play. I have to imagine that's appealing to a guy like Evan Stewart giving his skill set. So keep an eye on that. I'm excited for the tracking of his recruitment now with him being in the portal. Again, It's a very, very big fish out there. He's not a guy that you hope maybe ends up working out for you. You know what you're getting in Evan Stewart. He's been balling with a revolving door at quarterback more or less these last couple of years, and he's been doing it in the SEC. So feel pretty confident that'll translate. Now, Tate Rodemaker is also in the transfer portal. The Florida State quarterback. You thought he was going to start the bowl game against Georgia. Does not look like that will be the case. For me, this whole thing with Tate Rodemaker can be summed up pretty simply. We all want to be wanted, man. We all want to be wanted. And I have to believe Tate Rodemaker saw the writing on the wall with how aggressive Florida State was being in the transfer portal quarterback market, talking to DJU, talking to Cam Ward. Says, okay, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be the guy. I've waited my turn behind Jordan Travis. Mathematically, by nature of how long I've waited my turn, it should be my time. And right now, it sounds like he would have to go and compete with a high-level portal guy to get his job. At the stage of the game that Tate Rodemaker's in, not a risk that he necessarily wants to take. So hard to blame either side of this thing. The calendar itself is such a mess. We'll probably do a segment on that in the not-too-distant future as to why Tate Rodemaker has to transfer and make a decision right now, where I promise you he would love to step in there and be the guy to play against Georgia. Regardless, you feel bad for Tate Rodemaker, but kind of just the nature of, again, where the calendar's at across the college football landscape. Now, over our Christmas, I guess it was Christmas Eve, actually, Walter Nolan commits to Ole Miss. This is not enormously surprising. We knew there was a lot of smoke around Ole Miss and Oregon for Walter Nolan, but it was surprising to me to hear the immediate reaction from the folks in the Twitterverse. Probably just, bitter fans saying bitter things. But there was so much juice around Walter Nolan going to Ole Miss, a lot of pushback, I guess, from the other college football fan bases saying, well, he just went to the highest bidder. Well, hey, they just totally bought him with NIL. To that I would say, have we not been paying attention together here? Is that not what college football is right now? Like, okay, so let's rewind that. Walter Nolan is going to the highest bidder. That's what someone's trying to tell you as a negative thing against why he went to Ole Miss and trying to detract from Ole Miss landing him and trying to take away that, joy. I'm sitting here saying, good for Ole Miss. Good for Ole Miss to have their NIL ducks in a row to land the top player in the transfer portal. And if you're yelling about that and having an issue with that, I would say maybe lower your voice. It's not really a good look to yell about being broke. Well, hey, you just bought him. Y'all could have bought him too if that was the case. If that truly was as cut and dry as it is, as you say it is, then y'all could have ponied up and made something happen. Again, I'm not saying that was the case, but I am saying for the folks that are shouting and complaining about NIL, I'm like, come on now. Come on now. I don't think we necessarily want to go down that road and have an issue about the NIL structure and resources for your team if that's why you couldn't be in the Walter Nolan sweepstakes. So however you slice it, this is huge for Ole Miss. We've said it many times. I'll say it one more time right here on this podcast, or podcast if you're listening back. Quick plug for the podcast. But on this live show, this is Ole Miss taking that next step. Princely Umanmielen, you had Tyler Barron. Now you got your third SEC proven commodity on the defensive line. They are striving towards competing with the Bamas and the Georgias, not just competing, but beating those teams. That is their goal, and that is the move like this with Walter Nolan being added to that roster. They understand the assignment. Got to have the big boys to compete with the big boys. Now, Georgia, they made some moves over this past couple of days, too. Trevor Etienne, running back from Georgia. Colby Young, wide receiver from Miami. Two extremely talented individuals that will obviously add to the offense that's already been very potent this last couple of years. To me, the addition of both these guys, one, they're there to make an impact. Like some people were saying, well, hey, we got some young guys in that backfield as well. We want to make sure they get some touches, too. Trevor Etienne is a proven commodity. You don't have to wonder what's going on in that backfield. Colby Young, same thing. Miami wasn't necessarily as high-flying as they would have liked to be consistently this year. But with Carson Beck running the show, I think Colby Young's going to have a chance to have a really big pop here this upcoming season. But to me, this is more insurance of the Georgia offense staying dynamic. Like we've seen them evolve really since the beginning of the Stetson Bennett era, which to be fair is a pretty sizable length of time. No shade intended. Stetson, we love you. The offense has started to evolve from pro style. We're going to just ram it down your throat, be really physical in the trenches. They still have that. That's still who they want to be. But I think with what they were during different points in this season, they want to throw the football. They want to attack you different ways. Trevor Etienne, also a good pass catcher. They want to have big body dynamic wide receivers on the outside. Have to believe Brock Bowers is, for where I'm sitting, probably going to the NFL. So you add more size in that wide receiver room and be able to create those mismatches that you want to. Like, this is further proof of concept, attracting the right players to further the offense and staying dynamic of being able to throw the ball well, run the ball well, and guess what? You got the quarterback to do it. So that's going to be a lot of fun for the good folks in Athens. Those are two big pickups. Now, this isn't necessarily too much transfer portal news as much as it is reports, intel, maybe is the right word to use there. Pete Nakos, that's the second time I've mentioned PD Portal during this show, so that tells you who you need to follow on Twitter. Wouldn't it hurt to hit the notifications there as well. Says Ohio State is getting involved with Kansas State quarterback Will Howard. Now, to be clear, USC, I believe, is still a very viable option. The NFL, also still a very viable option for Will Howard. But the Ohio State noise, I think, is really interesting because I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of just assumed USC was going to be that school for Will Howard. And it still could be, but what we say a lot with these quarterbacks when it comes to making their decisions, whether it's on the recruiting trail at the high school level, whether it's via the portal, it comes down to your priorities. Comes down to your priorities. Two really good options. Most quarterbacks would kill to be able to go to USC or Ohio State. So Will Howard, just pick one, brother. That's kind of where we're standing. But the priorities, I think, are as follows. If you want to just put up good numbers, and if you want to be in a staff with a proven track record of developing quarterbacks with the proven quarterback whisperer, that's Lincoln Riley. Now, if your priority is to trust a structure and play with great playmakers and have the opportunity to be in a more stable organization, Ohio State makes sense. So it's kind of just what do you want to bet on to put yourself in the best position for the NFL draft. As good as USC and Lincoln Riley is with developing quarterbacks, there's some questions about how they're going to compete in the Big Ten. They didn't exactly knock it out of the park in the Pac-12 and in this past season, and you don't know that's really going to improve too much. And Will Howard, to be clear, did say he wants to be somewhere where he can compete for some hardware. So is that USC? I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying if you're Ohio State, the appeal there is just what I said. The weapons. Ryan Day also not necessarily a slouch of a quarterback developer either with what he's done with different guys like Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud. Like, say all you want about Lincoln Riley and USC. I think that's still a great fit, and how much they throw the football, that makes a lot of sense. But there's also, I think, the appeal for Ohio State of like, hey, outside of Kyle McCord, for the most part, those guys that have been to Ohio State in the past couple of years have been first-round draft picks, Heisman Trophy finalists. So it's, do you want to trust Lincoln Riley or do you want to trust the structure that's in place and produced pretty similar results to what Lincoln Riley has done at the quarterback position? So both are great options, just a matter of where Will Howard wants to end up at. And obviously, whenever he does commit, we will have immediate thoughts for you right away. And that could also, obviously, like I just said, that could include what's going on with the NFL and how he sees himself landing in that department. So that's kind of the latest from the portal. But again, keep it locked right here. We'll have thoughts for you every single time we do a live show. As long as the portal is open, we will have updates with who's going where, who's jumped in, and just different intel like that with what Pete Nakos is saying in regards to the rumblings across the transfer portal. All right, now it is New Year's Six Bowl game week. We got to jump into some predictions now. We got a couple of big ones I want to get to. We're going to talk about the Cotton Bowl here in just a second. Before we get to that, though, we got the Orange Bowl. It's Georgia, Florida State, 4 Eastern, ESPN, December 30th in Miami. Now, listen, this line has moved around quite a bit. It's currently starting to build in Georgia's favor. Right now, it's saying Georgia minus 17.5. All right, do we like that? Do we think Florida State can cover that? Heck, can they win this thing outright? What would it take to win it outright? We'll give you our thoughts right now. The big question I have for Georgia is twofold. Or rather, I guess I'll rephrase that. Here's what I'm looking at for Georgia. Does Georgia care? That's what everyone's going to ask, right? Does Georgia have the motivation with what they've done the last couple of years, winning national championships? The Orange Bowl is great. A lot of people would just, they would kill to be in the Orange Bowl. Most programs would. Georgia, do they have that same excitement as some other teams would? Because, again, that's not what they've come to expect under Kirby Smart. I wholeheartedly believe that Georgia actually is fired up to be in this game, or at least fired up to make a statement in this game, for a couple of reasons. The first is a lot of the guys on this roster that are going to play in this bowl game have the potential to come back next year. A couple of cats already said they are coming back next year. Smile Munden being one of them, Carson Beck, the quarterback, being the other. So there's the desire to have some continuity in place and kind of springboard headfirst into the 2024 campaign. The other part of this now is Kirby Smart. He is not going to let those guys relax at all. At all. You want to know why? Because he remembers, I promise, clear as day, that Sugar Bowl game against Texas and Sam Ehlinger getting on the mic after they beat Georgia as dogs and said, we're back. Kirby Smart, I promise you, whether he would tell you or not, I have to believe he felt some kind of way about that. I promise you, that message, loud and clear, is you don't want anybody else to say they're back by beating Georgia again. Okay, so I think they're going to be fired up for this one. I think, again, there's a statement to be made for Georgia, and I'm excited to see what they do. Now, in relation to opt-outs here, I'm going to speak very broadly because I don't want this to be dated in a couple of hours or in a couple of days, whatever happens here. Brock Bowers did not travel with the team on their plane. It does not mean he's not going to play. Okay, so he may still play in this game, just hadn't gotten there with the team at the time they did. But again, we go back to his injuries and him being dinged up in the SEC championship game. He may still play in this game. He may not. I'm going to address this kind of broadly because I kind of feel the same way about this game either way. Now for Florida State, speaking of opt-outs, Jaheim Bell's opted out. Johnny Wilson's opted out. Trey Benson's opted out. Keon Coleman, at the time of us recording this, was not listed on their depth chart. So take of that as you will. Tate Rodemaker's also in the transfer portal. So we're looking back to Brock Glenn, true freshman quarterback. He's got to be the guy for you in this game. Got to grow up pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. Brock Glenn, your first start was in the ACC championship game. Congratulations. Your second start is in a New Year's Six Bowl against the defending national champs. Oh, by the way, they've been back-to-back, so best of luck, brother. I think for Florida State, man, we talk about how much Georgia cares or doesn't care. Like, if I'm Florida State, I would hope there's a fair amount of care in this game. Like, think about what Florida State could do if they win this ball game, even with those opt-outs. That actually adds to the case you can make it for Florida State. Think about how much of a drop-the-mic game this could be for them. Beating the back-to-back national champs after an undefeated season with a plethora of opt-outs. Think about how that narrative would age over the next couple of years. This was the team that got left out of the college football playoff with an undefeated season as Power 5 conference champions in the ACC, and then they beat Georgia. Man, the committee sure looks silly right now, don't they? Like, as much as you want to get back at the committee for what happened on Selection Sunday, this is your chance to do it. This is your chance to put egg all over their face. Now, by nature of this being a double-digit spread, we got to have some non-negotiables here. The rule we have on this show, if it's double digits like this, 2-score spread, we tell you what has to happen for Florida State to win this football game, okay? Because it'd be very easy to sit here and say, we're taking Georgia. Yeah, of course. So is everybody and their mama with that spread. Now, for Florida State, what I just said a second ago, when it comes to these non-negotiables, man, like, I need a very, very clear want to. Because as much as this could be the opportunity to make a statement, this could also be that situation where you have the guys opt out. You know, you have Jared Verse who's opted out as well. You could have guys just kind of say, well, we don't have our full team. We don't have the guys that were a part of this whole season. We made our point by going undefeated. Man, forget the college football playoff committee. Forget this season. We did our thing. We're done with this year. And then not show up to play in a game like this. I would hope that doesn't happen. To win this game, needless to say, has to be some want to them. Other part of this, I need a game plan that somehow, some way is creative enough to catch this Georgia defense off balance. Now, that could be something that is maybe a couple of trick plays early on. Maybe it's something to go with a little bit extra screen game to get Georgia out of sorts. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but it has to, like I said, catch Georgia off balance, has to shelter Brock Glenn. I need a playmaker to be featured in this offense. Right now, I'm assuming that's not going to be Keon Coleman, so I'm going to go ahead and look to Destin Hill. He's a guy who's kind of been quietly doing his things throughout the course of this season. I need somebody to be my matchup that I can go to consistently to win and create offense for us. Because that spread is what it is for a reason. I need Florida State to be able to hang in there just enough. That's kind of the other part of this. Can Florida State weather the early storm from Georgia? We'll do a couple of things. One, we keep you in the football game. That's obvious. Second, psychologically, how much that would do for your sideline to take a punch and then realize you're okay, that does something for you. It generates some belief. Makes you more dangerous as the game wears further and further along. Because I think Carson Beck and company, they will come out swinging. We talked about the case that Florida State wants to make. I think Georgia wants to make the exact same case now. Because Carson Beck's coming back for next year, and they've got a ton of weapons still on this offense. Got a ton of guys that can still hurt you. Like they're so multiple. Florida State has to be able to take one of those pieces away from Georgia. Whether it's the run game, whether it's the pass game, like they got to do something to catch them off balance and just weather that early storm. We say it a lot with Georgia. We say it a lot with Carson Beck. Haven't really seen him be rattled too much. The SEC title game, I guess you could say maybe you saw him flinch a little bit, but not even really. Like Florida State, they've got a tremendous sack rate, even without Jared Verse in the game. I'm looking at Patrick Payton, who was listed on the depth chart. I'm looking at Braden Fisk. I'm looking at Kalen DeLoach. Like guys like that got to go and get theirs in a game like this. You got to make your presence felt. Because I don't think you can just sit back there and try and weather the storm. When I say weather the storm, I mean you got to swing back at Georgia. You got to find a way to make them just somehow, some way a little bit off balance because you cannot give them a two-way go with running and throwing the football. Now, with all that being said, man, here's my deal with this game. I think the depth of Georgia is just too good to not, at some point in time in this game, get theirs. Like, you say, okay, so Brock Bowers, let's go ahead and just, at the time of us being live, don't know if he's going to play or not. Let's just say he's not going to play in the game. Let's say that ends up being the case. Still got to deal with Oscar Delp. Still got to deal with Lawson Lucky. Still got to deal with the rest of the pass catchers in this Georgia offense, and there's a lot of them. Still got to deal with the run game. Like, there's so many ways for Georgia to beat you, so many ways for Georgia to eventually have that damn break, to where I don't know if I trust the jaw of Florida State. You can take one punch. Can you take two? Can you take three? Can you take one late in the third quarter where you go down by 10 points? Can you find a way to still come back and win that game, that kind of style of game? I worry about that because I don't know where I see the offense coming from for Florida State. Brock Glenn, as good as I think he could be long-term in Tallahassee, there was nothing in that game against Louisville that gave me supreme confidence that they were going to be able to match scores with a team like Georgia, who's scoring north of 33, 34 points a game right now. So with that being said, I'm taking Georgia to win, taking Georgia to cover, and I think they end up winning the Orange Bowl. I think they make a statement, and I think they set a pretty good tone for what 2024 is going to be for the Dogs. So again, that is this upcoming Saturday, man. New Year's 6 Bowls are finally here. Let's enjoy the heck out of it. Hey, if everyone could just like the video for us, we'd appreciate that tremendously. Got a nice little rhythm going on right now of 100 likes throughout the course of every single live show before we get off the air. I don't think we've had a show this year where we don't reach that goal before we finish up. So we got one more segment to get to, then got to get some of y'all question and answers. But yeah, again, that little thumbs up icon under the screen, under your picture, that would be tremendous if you could hit that for us, and we will keep a good thing going. Alrighty here. This game is going to be played before that game we just got to. It's the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State, favored by 2.5 points against Missouri. 8 Eastern, ESPN in Jerry World. Now, contrary to what the Ohio State social platform is going to tell you, this game is not being played in the desert. I appreciate what they tried to do there. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with Ohio State's social team saying there was a showdown in the desert. I digress. Ohio State, man, this is a game for them where they can remind the entire country who they are. Because the narrative around them the last couple of seasons has been, yeah, good team, but they're not elite because they can't get past Michigan, because they can't get past Georgia. Is that fair? I don't think so. But this is the game for Ohio State where you can reset that tone for 2024. Because much like the game we just talked about a second ago between Georgia and Florida State, Ohio State, they can have a lot of these guys come back. There's a lot of guys that are still yet to announce their plans for the 2024 season. So what I'm trying to say here is this doesn't have to be the last game of this season. This could be the first game of next season. So get fired up if you're a Buckeye fan. For Missouri, man, this is a chance to put an exclamation mark on what 2023 has been. I said this during our last podcast with Jake Crane, man. Like, I don't know who wants to see Missouri right now in a 12-team playoff. They've been one of the hottest teams in the country. They have a true identity under Eli Drinkwitz. Got a dynamic offense. Like, I wouldn't want to mess with them right now. This is a chance for them to light a fire for this offseason, like to beat one of the name brands in college football, Ohio State, your last game of the year, and then look forward to 2024, I'm just saying, I think this is kind of that chance for you to pour gasoline on what you've already done in 2023 with a 10-win season already. Now, the thing for me from Ohio State, defensively, the thought process has to be, do not let them get cooking. Because if they start to sizzle a little bit on that grill, then you start to get burned. And what I mean by that is, Missouri, if you're watching this game at home, or if you're watching this game in person, they're going to do a lot of jet sweep motion across the formation. All right, so it'll be Luther Burden going across the formation, could be Theo Weiss, but a lot of what you're going to see is that motion go one way, and then Cody Schrader back the other way. Big time running back for them. I don't know how that dude was playing D2 at one point in time, but he's definitely not anymore. He's playing in the SEC, and he is an All-American kind of back. All right, so with what he does in this football game, with what Missouri does, putting pressure on the perimeter of this Ohio State defense, it's going to be huge for the safeties to come up and rally and make tackles early. And then also it's going to be huge for the rest of this defense to not get bent out of position when they do try to, attack the edge. Because what happens here, what Missouri wants to do, is get 4 yards on that outside zone, then go back the other way with Luther Burden, that's everything receiver for them, and get 7 yards that way on a jet sweep or a bubble screen with a motion, and get your defense's eyes going this way, that way, left, right, all across the formation. And then when that happens, you start looking at all the window dressing, all the eye candy, and you lose track of the dude running 10 yards behind you, and that big play happens. That was the thing that hurt Ohio State last season. They did a much better job of it this year, but those pop plays, those dagger plays that go for 40 yards and a touchdown, you cannot have that against this Missouri offense. Because for Ohio State now, you look to who you have playing quarterback, and I think he's a baller. I think he's good enough to win you this football game, but he is still a question mark. He's still a question mark. Devin Brown, the ultimate question in this football game, what does he bring you? Because Kyle McCord, as much as people had an issue with what he wasn't for Ohio State this past year, dude still won a lot of ball games. I mean, you were still in position in that last drive to go and beat Michigan. It didn't happen, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I'm just saying Kyle McCord had the experience factor there, had been at Ohio State for a long time. Devin Brown has been at Ohio State for a minute, but doesn't have that same experience factor that Kyle McCord had. Now, I want to make sure we say this too. Missouri's defense, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be true to who they are, one of the best sack rates in the country. If you're Devin Brown, you need to understand your assignment, which is not when they blitz, spin out of it, make a big-time throw downfield, take the top off the defense. No, the assignment is to be still in that moment and know where to go with the football. Like I'm saying, before the play even happens, we got to be really diligent during the week if we're Devin Brown, knowing our hots. And when I say our hots, I mean when I get someone coming hot off the edge, I got someone hot in my face, I know where to go with the football right away. It may not be that 30-yard downfield dagger to Carnell Tate, but it might be that check down to Travion Henderson that's going to give us 10 yards and a first down on 3rd and 7. That is going to be the key. Because remember what people said about Devin Brown during the offseason. Hey, him and Kyle McCord going back and forth. The guys at Letterman Road did an awesome job reporting on that battle. But the issue with Devin Brown was, hey, he sometimes tries to do too much. That leads to bad decisions. If he can make good decisions, I have a lot of belief that Devin Brown has as much ability as you need to win this football game. And I'll take it a step further. All the good things we know about Kyle McCord, did he do anything superhuman for you besides take care of the football? Got the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., had some really impressive downfield throws for sure, but did he do anything physically that we don't think Devin Brown can do in this game? I happen to believe no. So if Devin Brown can take care of the football, make good decisions, and get it to the playmakers for Ohio State, they're going to be in really good position. But if you don't do that, if you don't take care of the football, and you give this Missouri offense extra bullets to work with, man, like Brady Cook, he will get to cooking, pun intended. So when it comes down to this game, I think it could come down to who has more ways to win. Like in a bowl game with the potential opt-outs you may or may not have, and again, I speak very broadly right now because I don't want to age this video, but like it may come down to who can play the most boring style of football. Now, Brady Cook for Missouri, what he does with his legs, that will be a major factor in this game. But I happen to believe this Ohio State defense, they feel some type of way about this game. JT Tuimoloau, I do not believe is going to opt out. Jack Sawyer, I do not believe is going to opt out. Sounds like they're both coming back. What they have in that front seven, I think they have been overlooked a lot since that Michigan game, and people have talked about them in a different way since that Michigan game. Like, people kind of just view them as the old Ohio State. Oh, well, Michigan still outrushed them. And no, this is still one of the best front sevens, I think, in America. And as good as Missouri is running the football, I think Ohio State will be up to the task. And more importantly, I think Ohio State offensively will be able to play vanilla enough, if they have to win this game. Travion Henderson is that guy in this game for me. I don't know exactly what they'll have at the wide receiver position, but running the football, I love Travion Henderson to be good for 4-ish yards a carry, and that being good enough. It may not be flashy. It may not be the Ohio State offense we've seen the past couple of years. Still, you got a quarterback wearing number 33 for you, which personally I'm a fan of, but it may not be the most aesthetically pleasing thing for a lot of the good folks watching this game. But with that being said, I think there's also the little bit of surprise factor there with Devin Brown. Because Devin Brown, you've only seen him now in garbage time and in some short packages, or in some short yardage packages, rather, where he's doing, the pseudo wildcat stuff for you. You know it's probably a designed quarterback run. But they haven't seen him really operate this offense just yet. So you now gave him a little bit of runway to operate this offense. Again, the Ohio State defense, I think, reminds everyone who they are. A lot of folks are leaning towards Missouri right now, even with that line being Ohio State -2.5. Missouri's kind of the trendy pick right now. Listen, we love trends. We just don't always follow them. So we're taking Ohio State to win this game. I think it's close. I'm taking Ohio State to win 29-26 in Jerry World. Be a lot of fun, man. Again, no shade to the Ohio State social team. We love y'all. That was just too good to not talk about just a little bit. All right. Now bringing on the keeper of the queue. Heavy lifter extraordinaire. People's champ, Nick Brake. Nick, what's up, baby? How we doing, brother?
Oh, doing pretty good, man.
Life is good. You're managing the chat. You're hustling, brother. We're back from I say Christmas break. We don't really take a break so much, but yeah, it's good to have the boys back on the air again together, man. What's the people saying on the live chat?
I actually have not found a single Ask JD question so far.
There we go.
I didn't put it in the tab because there's only 300 people watching at the moment. But I figured once I got on, I'd say, okay, everybody.
Yeah, I love it.
Put it in right now. JD, do you have anything?
Man, I would just say, let's do two things really quick. Let's like the video. We're about 25 or so likes shy of our goal of 100 before we get off the air. So big shouts to y'all. Second, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Okay, we're pushing towards 200K. Y'all have been elite in that. So we're going to go ahead and ask those two things. Right around 70% of the audience that's not yet subscribed. If you think you're subscribed, just double check. Make sure you're good to go. We want y'all with us moving forward here as we dive headfirst into college football playoff and the national championship. Like we got a lot of good content coming on this channel, so make sure you're dialed in. Again, make sure you like the video. We appreciate y'all enormously for that. Anything popping up there, Nick?
Dude, I thought that would be enough time.
It's all good.
Do we not have any questions? Nobody? See, I didn't put it in. Because I was like, man, it's only 10:50. Probably go for a little longer.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Having a good time.
Yeah, Rohan asked a question, so we're good to go.
Let's go.
What Ohio State players do you think will leave for the NFL draft?
Man, I would be wildly surprised if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't leave. Like, I understand the thought behind, well, he can make a lot of NIL money, and there's a lot of real smoke to him coming back. But, like, I kind of reminds me a little bit of what's going on with C.J. Stroud and the thought around, well, hey, he could come back too. He wants to beat Michigan, and that's all true. But, like, if you're going to be a top 3 pick, which I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is very much so in the range of being, I don't know if it's getting much better than that. So I might kind of take that while it's hot, and I might just go to the NFL draft for Marvin Harrison Jr. Outside of that, though, man, I think everybody else is a fair guess, which is exactly what it would be. I think it'd be a guess. So Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he's out, but I hope we get one more game with him in this Cotton Bowl. That'd be a blast.
JD, they're flowing in right now.
There we go.
This next question coming from SEC for lifer. Would you rather Oregon or Ole Miss? Or would you rather have Oregon or Ole Miss's transfer portal haul?
Ooh. You know what? That's so tricky because the thing with Oregon is they got 2 quarterbacks. Like, if I'm building a roster for the long haul, I probably would lean Oregon. If I'm building a team for just this season, I'd probably take Ole Miss. So I'll answer definitively and say Oregon, again, because they got Dylan Gabriel for this year. You got Dante Moore for next year. And so I think that's a really good place to be. I think a lot of teams don't have any quarterbacks, and they have 2. So we'll go with Oregon there and feel pretty good about doing that.
Okay. A lot of really quick questions today.
I like it,
some guy says, why does Michigan have to play the worst time that they have to prepare for a game? Or worse, excuse me, I'll ask that again. Why does Michigan play worse the more time they prepare for a game? That's an interesting question because maybe it's more historically than recent. But
a lot of shade
is that
being
something
thrown.
you could think could happen?
A lot of shade being thrown, man. I just think they've had some tough draws, to be honest, in this college football playoff. Like TCU, I won't say they were a more formidable opponent. Michigan just didn't play well that day, to be honest with you. But that's a tough offense to prep for with what Garrett Riley did, with how much they ran, the different motions, and honestly the caliber of players they had with Quentin Johnston last season. Like we won't revisit that too much, but like it was very clear that TCU had some up their sleeve for Michigan that day, and then obviously Michigan did not play well offensively. And then when it comes to playing Georgia the year before, like Georgia obviously ended up winning the national title the last 2 years. So it's tough to draw the back-to-back national champs, man, on the front end of that thing. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I don't really necessarily feel like they have a problem prepping for teams. And even if they did, you know, that staff has had some changes too, and these guys are more experienced. So I wouldn't look into that too much. I think all time to prep is good time to prep, Nick.
Okay. Eduardo says, who do you think are the best players in the playoffs, specifically best player in the college football playoffs?
Man, you know what? Jalen Milroe makes a lot of sense. If I had one player, though, I had to, like, put money on putting up numbers in the playoff, regardless of who they were against, dude, I'd take Xavier Worthy. I think he is so difficult to defend. There are so many ways to get him the football. You can get the ball to him in space on the screen. You can't guard him one-on-one. Like, I think he is a problem, and we saw it week 2 in person against Alabama. We might see it for a second time against Alabama, maybe in person as well, hint, hint, wink, wink. But still, I mean, I think his talent level is through the roof, and I'd probably take him to be the best player in this playoff, Nick.
Okay, 2 more questions.
I love
this
it.
one from Austin Armstrong. How would you feel about a college football Pro Bowl that would go by conferences?
Man,
Nobody really likes the Pro Bowl, but maybe that'd be better for college football.
I love the idea of doing a college football Pro Bowl, but with like flags. Like I don't love the idea of guys playing tackle football when they're already opting out of bowl games, which is another conversation for another time. But man, if we could find a way to get some kind of all-star game going that was just good fun, and it was not a thing where guys were playing for the Senior Bowl, or which I guess the Senior Bowl kind of will be a Pro Bowl of sorts for guys now that we got juniors playing. That'd be a lot of fun, man. I'll tell you what, like there's a whole thing with like, you know, the TV product of the Pro Bowl for the NFL and stuff like that. I'm just telling you, I think you'd have a lot of people dialed in to see their guys play one last time. The flag football part that I just suggested might take away from the viewing enjoyment a little bit, but I'd be here for it, is all I'm going to say. I'd be here for it.
Okay. JD, I guess we have a couple more that are coming in, but
Great.
We'll go kind of into our speed round.
I love it.
Brian says, why do you think it looks like everything is falling apart at A&M?
You know, I don't know if it's falling apart. I think it's just kind of the natural way things work when you bring in a new staff. Like, for guys that were maybe on the fence about transferring out, they are probably transferring out now with this new staff, or maybe they're buying into the new staff and wanting to stay. But I think the reality is guys like Evan Stewart, guys like Walter Nolan, they had the opportunity to go somewhere else and kind of get a fresh start. I don't think it's indicative of A&M or indicative of what Evan Stewart and Walter Nolan have done to why they've pivoted out. So I do think there's something to be said for, outside of those two guys, just overall, any program you go to, whenever you're bringing in a new staff, there is a very clear-cut way of doing things that's set. And now in the day and age of player mobility, you see guys say, okay, well, that's fine, you want to do it that way, but I'm going to go ahead and do it a different way, and my different way is going somewhere else. So I don't know. I think it's tough, too, in college football because people commit to people, and whenever those people you committed to originally aren't there anymore, it's human nature to look somewhere else. So, again, I don't think it's so much things falling apart at A&M. I don't think it's anything about Walter Nolan or Evan Stewart not being fits. Like, it just kind of is, in my opinion, just the way this thing is working right now in college football with players able to leave and new staffs coming in right around this time of the year.
JD, John Decker, do you think Mike Norvell has had the biggest ups and downs this year in college football? Like, maybe not as a coach, but like experiences, I'd say.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, there's the one massive down, which was not making the playoff. Like, outside of that, man, it's been a lot of good ups for the boys.
Injury of Travis, for sure.
Injury of Jordan Travis, which I guess, is obviously another massive down. But, yeah, I guess we look at it that way. There's quite a bit of ups and downs for Mike Norvell, especially in that month of November into early December. But I do feel like Florida State's going to be fine. They're going to land somebody good out of the portal. They're still in the ACC, which I think they got to feel pretty good about competing for and winning again next year. Yes, they had some things not go their way this year, and that's not, cliche speak. That's truly they've had some things just not work out for them with the injury of Jordan Travis and then being left on the college football playoff. But, man, I really hope we see them take the field in Miami and just give it one more go and muster up some pride and just finish through the line here and be able to make a statement against a team like Georgia. I would just be so disappointed if we see the guys that didn't opt out of the bowl game roll out there and just kind of sleepwalk through that game against a team that will cover that spread if they don't show up. So I hope that's what happens, Nick, but we're going to see. I hope Florida State shows up in a big way.
This end right here, JD, Caleb Sosa, from a matchup perspective, I'll say, would you rather see Texas, Bama, Texas versus Michigan? And then he seems to be a Texas fan, but I'm going to go ahead and add a Washington versus either of those teams. What would be, matchup-wise, what do you think the best title game would be?
I truly believe what we saw in Atlanta was one of the top two teams in the country. Maybe the top two teams in the country between Georgia and Bama. That's not me being, as some people will get in the chat and say, SEC homer. I'm from California. I don't know how you can call me an SEC homer if I'm not from that place. The other part of this, I would say, though, I think Texas and Washington have similar styles in the sense that they're both going to challenge Alabama if it's that team vertically. I think Alabama-Texas is the matchup I want to see, Nick. And not because I want to see a rematch, because that part of it is admittedly a little bit off-putting because we've seen this game before. But I think those are the best two teams. I really do. I think Texas and what they have on the perimeter and their ability to run the football, and then the way that Jalen Milroe is playing right now and the way that defense is coming into their own, I really think that would be a matchup that would be the top two teams from a talent level, and then also just by nature of the rhythm they're in right now. So if we get Washington there, it'll be awesome too, and they're going to put on a show regardless. And if we get Michigan in there, they'll be phenomenal as well. But I think Texas, Bama, man, I would love to see that rematch, and I would love to see the way those teams have evolved since their meeting in week 2.
Okay, Dan.
Good stuff,
I called you Dan.
brother.
See you, JD.
Good stuff, big dog.
I don't even know a Dan, but I'll see you later, man.
Nick Brake, heavy lifter extraordinaire. Be back on the air tomorrow. Hey, big shouts to y'all getting us over 103 likes. Hey, we're a little stuffed up today. Y'all can hear it in the podcast. Y'all can hear it in the live show. We're, it's not the flu game, nothing like that. But I appreciate y'all getting in here, bringing the juice, and making this show what it is. Again, we are back on the air tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on this program, the On3 YouTube channel. On this show, The Hard Count. Got some more predictions for you for some New Year's 6 bowls. Should be a good time. Can't wait to see y'all there. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all